morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Kent. We are a spiritual community that seeks to be diverse and inclusive as we inspire love, work for justice, and grow together in community. I am Commissioned Lay Minister Lori Merkin-McGee, serving as today's worship leader. I'm joined in welcoming you by today's worship associate, Lo Taylor, who you will see momentarily. I would also like to thank Kailani Walker for allowing us to use her artwork, which is gracing the cover of our order of service today. Now let us take a moment to breathe, to enter into this time of community once again, and to invite Spirit to be present among us and to open our hearts to life and the gift of this day. Come, let us worship together.
We are unstoppable. Another world is possible. 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 Which side?
What side are you on, my people?
Which side are you on? The freedom side. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? The freedom side. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? The freedom side.
Our call to worship this morning will require some crowd participation. You'll know what to do. On a Holy Night in 1969 by Otto O'Connor. On a Holy Night in 1969 in an inn, also known as a bar, called the Stonewall Inn. A basement which had no running water, nor safe fire exits. Queer people of many colors and kinds danced together, for it was the only place where they were allowed to dance, at least permitted to by the mafia who ran the inn. In those days, it was common for the police to frequent this inn, not to join in on the dance, the underground celebration, but to send the dancers home and make arrests. When they would arrive, the lights would go on, and the people would all be lined up, and then all those in drag, all those who were trans, all those without proper identification, they were arrested and taken into custody. But on this holy night, that early morning of June 28th, the people said, "Not tonight." As they called them to line up, the trans women refused to go. And as the police began to beat and arrest them, and as the people spilled out from the bar onto the streets, Christopher Street, a crowd grew to watch. And then, as trans women, lesbians, and gay men were getting arrested, a yell came from the crowd. "Gay power!" And as a trans woman was shoved, she shoved back, and the crowd began throwing bottles at the wagon. And suddenly it erupted. For once the people didn't line up. For once the people said, "No more! We've had enough!" It was almost as if that night, being pulled out of the darkness of the underground Stonewall Inn, one too many times, they said, "I'm ready to be seen." On this holy night, when the power of the oppressed rippled through the streets of New York, when queer people said, "No more," our world will never be the same. 50 years ago, it was illegal to be gay, to be trans, to dance, and to love, and to celebrate. And now, only 50 years later, here we are celebrating at a church, gay and straight together, queer and straight together, trans and cis together, all in this together. And so here we are, celebrating these stories of life and love and defiance and celebration. Let us also remember and pay tribute to our movement ancestors, many of them trans women of color who led the rebellion that night. You see, Pride is a celebration of that anniversary, the anniversary of that riot, at the Stonewall Inn in New York City a holy night. So happy Pride. Welcome to this joyful celebration. Bring your whole selves, your gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer selves, your drag queen, butch and femme, cross-dressing, nail painting, tutu-wearing selves. Your genderqueer, gender fluid, agender, pansexual, quilt bag selves. And all the other identities that are and will be. And let's have a celebration, because joy is a rebellion too. And this church is queer and fabulous. Amen? Amen. Let us begin.
This morning's story is called Sylvia and Marcia Start a Revolution. This story was written by Joy Michael Ellison and Tashika Silver and illustrated by Tashika Silver. All right, let's begin. Sylvia Rivera and Marcia P. Johnson weren't just friends. They were as close as sisters. Strolling arm in arm down Christopher Street, they looked magnificent. "Sylvia," Marcia cried, "see that girl over there? She looks hungry. Give her $1. "Marcia," said Sylvia, "that's all our money. How will we eat?" Marcia smiled. "Us? We'll be fine, honey." "It's not right for these kids to be sleeping on the street," said Sylvia. She remembered what her grandma said when Sylvia wore a dress for the first time. Sylvia had finally felt free, but Grandma frowned. "You're a boy," she said. "Act like it." Sylvia knew she could only act like herself. Sylvia, like Marcia, was a transgender girl. People thought she was a boy, but she knew differently. She hated seeing other transgender girls suffer for just being themselves too. "And we got something for girls like us. We got to do something for girls like us," said Marcia. This part's really hard for me to read. "That's a man in a dress," a woman shouted and pointed. "Look at me," said Marcia, twirling. "I'm not a man. I'm a woman, and I always have been." Sylvia laughed. And then Marcia heard a call. "Oh no," thought Marcia. "Here comes Alice in a red-blue dress, or in the red-blue dress." "Oh no," thought Marcia, "that means the cops are coming." Police could arrest transgender girls at that time for wearing dresses. She grabbed Sylvia's hand and they ran. Sylvia panted, "You okay, honey?" "Honey, I'm tired of being treated so bad," said Marcia. Sylvia sighed. "Someday, girls like us will be able to wear whatever we want. People will call us by the names we choose, and they will respect that we are women. The cops will leave us alone, and no one will go hungry." Sylvia and Marcia talked and talked about their life getting better for themselves and their sisters. And then, on June 28th, 1969, they took action. Sylvia burst into the Stonewall Inn. "Happy birthday, Marcia." "Thanks, honey," Marcia said. They grooved on the dance floor until Marcia heard a voice yell, "Here comes Alice in the blue dress." "Oh no," she thought, "the police." The policeman said, "That's a man in a dress," as he sneered at Marcia. "Show me your ID or I will arrest you." "Not on my birthday," said Marcia. The police ordered everyone into the street and began making arrests. "Come on," Marcia yelled, and the two friends rushed towards the police van. I wonder what they're going to do. They pushed past the police officers, broke open the van door, and dragged out their friends to set them free. "The revolution!" shouted Sylvia. "It's beautiful." The next day, everyone on Christopher Street was talking about the Stonewall Rebellion. Sylvia and Marcia strode with pride, like two lionesses, until they heard that call. Here comes Alice in the blue dress. Look at these children with no homes running from the cops, Sylvia said as she shook her head. We still got to do something for them. Marcia frowned. But we're just two friends. We're just trying to survive ourselves. We'll give them what we've got, said Sylvia. Friendship. Let's get a house and open it up to all the young sisters living on the streets. And they did. Young transgender girls came from miles around to live with Sylvia and Marcia. Together, they took care of each other. They ate together, laughed together, and struggled together. And they became a family. And Sylvia and Marcia spent their lives fighting for the survival and the rights of all transgender people. And through it all, they were best friends. Their memory shines like a star, showing us that with our friends, we can change the world. Let's sing together. Oops, I'm away from the microphone. Let's sing our doxology together.
We changed it a tiny bit. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of joy and pride arise. All colors of love on earth be sung. Through every land, by every tongue.
I invite you now to make yourselves comfortable in your seats, to put your feet flat on the floor, to feel the earth underneath us, to lower your gaze or close your eyes as you are comfortable, and to open your hearts to all that you find here today. Let us enjoy silence for a moment together. Part of our journey in this life is sorrow, struggle, and loss. In the spirit of being a community of compassion and care, we take time to share those sorrows and losses that are on our hearts right now. If you are on Zoom, please use the chat box to share. Will you please join me now in the spirit of prayer meditation with this reading by Amy Johnson called Your Love Rains Down on Us All. Loving Creator, beyond our understanding, yet closer than our breath, breathe into us your love, so that we may love ourselves and others as you do. Help heal the fear, hate, and judgment that wound so many. Help us know deeply and certainly that your love transcends all labels, all categories, all words. Your love is. Your love rains down on us all. Everyone is invited to your table. We each bring our whole and broken parts and come together in your love, which binds us and heals us all. Amen. Life also brings joy and wonder and awe. Let us now share the joys that come on our hearts and minds this morning. I am joyful, as many of you are, for the love that can be found at Akron Pride, which was yesterday. So many of you were there, both in body and in spirit. It's wonderful to see such a large and loving crowd of people of all shapes and sizes and colors and everything. With gratitude for these and every blessing we receive in life, for the gift of life itself, for the companionship of one another on life's journey, for the beauty of this world and this day of possibility, we raise our hearts in gladness with the word, Amen.
Oh, you can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know that I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're down. Oh, you can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know that I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done.
Music has always been a little queer. Think about it. Glitter, dancing, makeup, costumes. When was the last time you felt the most free? Have you ever danced around your room singing into a pretend microphone? Have you ever danced to a song and it felt like you were in your own fantasy world where you could just be free to be whoever you wanted to be? Music can be a great escape, and that experience can be life-saving for a queer kid who doesn't yet have the words to express who they are. The first openly gay artist signed to a major label was Bruce Wayne Campbell, who went by the stage name Jabriath. It's been said about him that he was a sexual hero, truly the first gay pop star. How extreme that was to the US at the time. I wonder how many gay boys were saved by Jabriath between 1965 and 1983. Jabriath paved the way for the more famous gay singers, Elton John and George Michael, who were extremely brave for being out at such a time. Music has undertones that not everyone can understand. Many artists were out before they were actually out, writing their stories in their music and lyrics. Barry Manilow, for example. He came out way after he blew up, in his 70s actually. If you pay attention to the lyrics of his music, you can see it wasn't that much of a surprise. Music has affected so many young lives, teaching people that being queer isn't wrong. A very famously gay anthem song is I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. It wasn't intended to be a queer anthem, but here we are. Many of the LGBTQ people adore this song and feel it speaks to them, and I'm sure that everyone has their song that you can understand and relate to and just feel more than the others. As a lesbian, my ancestors are the Indigo Girls, Katie Lang, and Melissa Etheridge. These brave women were also out at a time when being out could destroy a person's career. But something happened in the 1990s that was remarkable. LGBTQ humans got louder and prouder and showered these out artists with love. Turns out gay money is the same as straight money. Their followings grew, and even to this day, the Indigo Girls are still playing sold-out gigs all over the country to crowds of lesbians and allies and creating communities of queer pride and life-giving music. Melissa Etheridge plays free gigs in a women's prison as a passion project, knowing that music heals people. Melissa proclaims at all of her prison gigs that the prisoners are not broken, they are healing. These women and many others wrote songs about queer love and sing each note right to the hearts of young queer kids who need to know that they are not alone. Amy, Emily, Katie, and Melissa, and more were an unapologetic wave of a music revolution that was the soundtrack to a generation of queer people fighting for their lives. They paved the way for my generation. What does my generation look like, you totally just asked me? We, the young queers, are benefiting from the work of our elders. Being out and proud has not hurt, but instead enhanced the careers of Chappell Roan, Sam Smith, Janelle Monáe, Renee Rapp, Toa Bird, Billie Eilish, Troye Sivan, Adam Gilbert, Girl in Red, and so many more. These artists speak to me in a way that others can't. They create music that affirms my very identity, and that is a very powerful thing. With music, the work of my ancestors, and queer representation, my generation will be ready soon to take the lead in the fight for equality. We are going to have the best soundtrack. Like these lyrics written by Chappell Roan, love is a kaleidoscope, how it works I'll never know, and even all the change, it is somehow all the same. Turn it to the left and right, color shining in your eyes. And even upside down, it's beautiful somehow. It's never just a shape alone, love is a kaleidoscope.
We're going to sing a hymn together, and we invite a couple friends to help. This hymn is potentially new for you, so your job will be the chorus, and we've got a couple verses for you too.
Unitarian Universalists have always been on the front lines of social and political activism, so many of us are at least familiar with the Stonewall Riots. I thought I knew a lot about the riots and the events leading up to them, but I learned a great deal more in preparing this service. The Stonewall Riots, also called the Stonewall Uprising, began in the early hours of June 28, 1969, when New York City police raided the Stonewall Inn, a gay club located in Greenwich Village in New York City. The raid sparked a riot among bar patrons and neighborhood residents as police roughly hauled employees and patrons out of the bar, leading to 6 days of protests and violent clashes with law enforcement outside the bar on Christopher Street. The events of June 28, 1969 may have been the catalyst for the gay rights movement in the United States and around the world, but there were other protests that occurred in the previous decade that set the stage for Stonewall. In 1924, Henry Gerber, a German immigrant, founded in Chicago the Society for Human Rights, the first documented gay rights organization in the United States. 1924. Because of his U.S. Army experience in World War I, Gerber was inspired to create his organization by a homosexual emancipation group in Germany called the Scientific Humanitarian Committee. Here in the U.S., the group only lasted 1 year due to police interference. In 1928, English poet and author Radcliffe Hall stirred up controversy when she published her lesbian-themed novel, The Well of Loneliness. The novel is perhaps the first text that presents homosexuality as an inborn and unalterable trait. The banning of the book drew so much attention to the very subject it was intended to suppress that it left British authorities wary of further attempts to censor books with lesbian content. In a study of working class lesbian community in Buffalo, New York, in the 40s and 50s, The Well of Loneliness was the only work of lesbian literature anyone had read or heard of. For many young lesbians in the 1950s, it was the only source of information about lesbianism. The Well's name recognition made it possible to find when bookstores and libraries did not yet have sections devoted to LGBT literature. Has anyone read it? I knew you did, Viv. It's a really good book if you're interested. It's really good. It's very sad, but yeah. Whatever momentum gay and lesbian people had toward social acceptance during the 1920s ended during World War II. The eugenics movement, fully embraced by Hitler's regime, caused widespread fear and panic in gay and lesbian people all over the world. During the war, the Nazis held men suspected of or arrested for homosexuality in concentration camps, marking them with the infamous pink triangle badge, which was also given to sexual predators. Homosexuality and sexual deviance were one and the same. After the war, these men were not generally freed, but taken from the concentration camps and forced to finish out sentences in prison. Much later, in the 1970s and 80s, the pink triangle became a symbol of LGBTQ pride in the US, and people wore the badge as an act of defiance against hate. In 1950, Harry Hay founded the Mattachine Society, one of the nation's first gay rights groups. The Los Angeles organization coined the term homophile, which was considered less clinical and less focused on sexual activity than homosexual. Mattachine Society, which had local chapters in other parts of the country, in 1955 began publishing the country's second publication, second gay publication, the Mattachine Review. That same year, 4 lesbian couples in San Francisco founded an organization called the Daughters of Bilitis, which soon began publishing a newsletter called The Ladder, the first lesbian publication of any kind. These early years of the movement also faced some notable setbacks. The American Psychiatric Association listed homosexuality as a form of mental disorder in 1952. It was not removed until 1973. In 1953, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed an executive order that banned gay people, or more specifically, people guilty of sexual perversion, from federal jobs. The ban would remain in effect for some 20 years. In the late 1950s saw the beginning of physical uprisings in major U.S. cities. The Cooper Donuts riot of 1959 was a response to the routine harassment of LGBTQ people by the police in Los Angeles. The uprising began when 2 police officers attempted to arrest 2 drag queens, 2 male sex workers, and a gay man. One of those arrested protested the lack of room in the police car, and onlookers began throwing assorted coffee, donuts, cups, and trash at the police until they fled in their car without making the arrests. The Cooper Donuts riot predates Stonewall by 10 years and is often believed to be the very first gay uprising in the United States. Although these events are little remembered today, they contextualize the fight for LGBTQ rights and remind us that this struggle is not limited to one city or one event. The Cooper Donuts riot and many other events helped pave the way for Stonewall and for all of the victories since. In 1966, 3 years before the Stonewall Riots in New York, a group of trans women in San Francisco stood up to police inside Jean Compton's cafeteria, an all-night restaurant in the Tenderloin neighborhood of San Francisco and a popular queer gathering spot. A trans woman, fed up with the harassment and abuse, is said to have thrown a cup of coffee in an officer's face, sparking a chaotic riot and an unprecedented movement of trans resistance to police violence. The screaming queens of San Francisco found their voice and fought back. Because of the numerous anti-gay laws in New York City, LGBTQ folk could not be served alcohol in public bars. In fact, gay men and women in New York City could not be served alcohol in public due to liquor laws that considered the gatherings of homosexuals to be disorderly, no matter what they were doing. In fear of being shut down by authorities, bartenders would deny drinks to patrons suspected of being gay or kick them out altogether. Others would serve them drinks, but force them to sit facing away from the other customers to prevent them from socializing. However, the crime syndicate saw profit in catering to shunned gay clientele, and by the mid-1960s, the Genovese family controlled most Greenwich Village gay bars. In 1966, they purchased the Stonewall Inn, at the time a straight bar and restaurant. They cheaply renovated it and reopened it in the next year as a gay bar. Stonewall Inn was registered as a type of private bottle bar, which did not require a liquor license because patrons were supposed to BYOB, bring their own liquor, basically. Club attendees had to sign their names in a book upon entry to maintain the club's false exclusivity. The Genovese family bribed New York's 6th police precinct to ignore the activities within the club. In fact, many patrons signed their name as Judy Garland. Without police interference, the crime family could cut costs however they saw fit. The club lacked a fire exit, running water behind the bar to wash glasses, clean toilets, and palatable drinks. Nonetheless, the Stonewall Inn quickly became an important Greenwich Village institution. It welcomed drag queens who received a bitter reception at other gay bars and clubs. It was a nightly home for many runaways and homeless gay youths who panhandled or shoplifted to afford the entry fee. And it was one of the few, if not the only, gay bar left that allowed dancing. Raids were still a fact of life, but usually corrupt cops would tip off mafia-run bars before the raids occurred, allowing owners to stash the alcohol and hide other illegal activities. In fact, the New York Police Department had stormed Stonewall Inn just a few days before the riot-inducing raid. When the police raided the Stonewall Inn on the morning of June 28, 1969, it came as a surprise. This time, the bar was not tipped off. Armed with a warrant, police officers entered the club, roughed up patrons, and, finding bootlegged alcohol, arrested 13 people, including employees and people violating the state's gender-appropriate clothing statute. Female officers would take suspected cross-dressing patrons into the bathroom to check their sex. Fed up with constant police harassment and social discrimination, angry patrons like Marcia and Sylvia and neighborhood residents hung around outside the bar rather than dispersing, becoming increasingly agitated as the events unfolded and people were aggressively manhandled. At one point, an officer hit a woman over the head as he forced her into the police van. She shouted to onlookers to act, inciting the crowd to begin throwing pennies, bottles, cobblestone, and any other objects they could find at the police. Within minutes, a full-blown riot involving hundreds of people began. The police, a few of the prisoners, and a Village Voice writer barricaded themselves in the bar, which the crowd attempted to set on fire after breaching the barricade repeatedly. The fire department and a riot squad were eventually able to douse the flames, rescue those inside Stonewall, and disperse the crowd. But the protests, sometimes involving thousands of people, continued in the area for 5 more days, flaring up at one point after the Village Voice published its account of the riots. Gay liberation had begun. On the 1-year anniversary of the riots on June 28, 1970, thousands of people marched in the streets of Manhattan from the Stonewall Inn to Central Park, which is no small distance, in what was then called the Christopher Street Liberation Day, America's first gay pride parade. The parade's official chant was, "Say it loud, gay is proud." Every decade since has seen more and more freedom and acceptance for LGBTQ folks. Sodomy laws were overturned, anti-discrimination laws were enacted, and society has shifted toward a celebration of diversity. Not always, of course, and not everywhere. There is still fear, hatred, and misunderstanding of LGBTQ people, but as a whole, it really is better. When I came out in the spring of 1994, it was a different world than it is now. Pride Month existed, but it wasn't mainstream. There were no displays in stores, there was no merchandise, there were no pride ads in mainstream media. In order to find anything LGBTQ related, you had to go to a major city like Cleveland or Columbus, search out the arty, avant-garde shops, and then hopefully you might find something. The gay section was always toward the back, and the items were usually stickers, buttons, and jewelry. I still have many of these items, as I know some of you do as well. They seem like rare artifacts now. Today, pride is everywhere. In June of every year, the world explodes into rainbows. There are ads in mainstream media, and many, many stores have pride sections, like Target, Old Navy, Ulta, Five Below, Bath & Body Works, Lane Bryant, Lego, and even Justice, a clothing store for preteen girls. And what's even better is that all of the stores I just listed give a portion of the proceeds from Pride purchases to the LGBTQ charity organizations like the Trevor Project. I always purchase at least a small something from most Pride displays. It lets the company know that someone wants Pride items, and truth be told, I like rainbows. I do want to lift up that some companies have jumped on the Pride bandwagon for the profits without actually making a difference for LGBTQ people. However, it is my opinion that visibility is never bad. And if even one of these displays makes someone feel seen, then it is completely worth it. This is what pride means to me. If seeing all these rainbows makes me feel like my life is valid and valued, me, someone who is very secure in my sexuality and identity, what must it mean to someone just coming out? My friend Brian puts it this way: pride is the fulfillment of a dream I never thought would come to fruition in my lifetime, that I would be free to be myself, that I would be free to marry. But more than that, pride is a celebration of the fact that no matter how much the world tried to break me down and beat me into submission, I am here. I not just survived, but I am thriving. I was so moved at this year's Pride celebration in Canton at seeing the supportive parents and families of young kids coming together to celebrate love. Also, all the allies coming out to show support. It says to me that with every generation, the shadow we used to have to live under has become much smaller. Dark times, yes, we still face them, but love will outlast hate every time. I have always believed in the philosophy that no matter who you are or where you fall on the wide arcing spectrum of gender and sexuality, you should be loud, be proud, and be you. Representation is so important, especially to our youth. In some cases, it might even be life-saving. So I say, the more rainbows, the better. We start with visibility, and then we continue the work for equality and justice, work that was started many decades ago by our gay, lesbian, trans, bisexual, and queer forebears. We ride on their shoulders, seeing farther than they ever thought possible. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." Wherever you fall on that spectrum of gender and sexual identity, know that you are whole and holy, just as you are. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Our spiritual community thrives in its shared life of worship, community, and ministry as each of us participates in the circle of giving and receiving. This is possible due to your generous gifts of money, time, and care for each other, and the recognition that we are all connected. To help others in our community thrive, we also give to agencies and organizations in Kent and beyond that serve those in need. August's special offering is for the Nature Conservancy, an organization that works to advance effective, lasting conservation in more than 70 countries and territories. In the spirit of gratitude for the gift of one another and this community and the abundance that makes generosity possible, we now give and receive the offering as a sign of our shared commitment to the life and work of this congregation and beyond. Will the ushers please come forward?
much hope for this unruly heart of mine. Then you came along, and right or wrong, feelings began to overflow. We had to hide, thinking that no one else could know. And not having you near me was where I drew the line. So I had to conceal this poor unruly heart of mine. And though I don't know how or when, but somehow I learned to see, no matter what the world might say, this heart is the best part of me. So fierce, all in the past, fading so fast, I won't stay hidden anymore. I'm who I am, and I think that's worth fighting for. And nobody out there ever gets to define the life I'm meant to lead with this unruly heart of mine. And though I don't know how or when, but somehow I learned to see, no matter what the world might say, this heart is the best part of me. So fierce, all in the past, fading so fast, I won't stay hidden anymore. I'm who I am, and I think that's worth fighting for. And nobody out there ever gets to define the life I'm meant to lead with this unruly heart of And nobody out there ever gets to define the life I'm meant to lead with this unruly heart of mine.
They are a tough act to follow, I just have to say. Will you please join me now in the words for extinguishing our chalice that are on the screen and in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. May carry in our hearts and minds are together again. Our closing hymn is number 368. Now let us sing. Will you please rise and joyously join in singing the closing hymn?
Let us sing.
One quick announcement, we have tie-dye today. If you would like to participate in the tie-dye that our lovely Becky Haynes is leading for us. About the fight for marriage equality, Barack Obama said, "Folks who were willing to endure bullying and taunts and stayed strong and came to believe in themselves and who they were and slowly made an entire country realize that love is love. What an extraordinary achievement. What a vindication of the belief that ordinary people can do extraordinary things." And now, believing that change comes from a million smaller ones, that one person standing up for others inspires thousands of others to do the same, and that equal rights for everyone means liberation for us all. Let us go forth to inspire love, work for justice, and grow together in community. Namaste and amen.